Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today we're going to continue with the idle pose, this Karate Kid effect here that we want to have with the animation. And now we're going to do the offsets that I was talking about. So here's the deal, and I want to explain why this is happening. I'm going to use a different... it's fine, it's fine. So what I'm going to do here is the following. If I select the curves here, you're going to see that there is an issue where the curve starts and where the curve ends. If we use infinity, and you saw it in one of the other examples that we've done before, sometimes the transition from one curve, once it goes into the infinity cycle, it's not as clean as we might want. And we can play around and try to match it as perfectly as possible, but it's going to be tricky, especially with characters like this where we have a lot of moving parts. We want things to be slightly offset in a more interesting way, and infinity could cause issues. So by doing this trick, by multiplying or duplicating the cycle manually, we can now grab any part of this cycle, any curves of this cycle, for instance, the hands. Let me grab the hands. And if I grab the hands and I just move these things, let's say 2 frames, 1 and 2. I'm using shift and middle mouse click on here on the graph editor. Now I've offsetted the whole curve 2 frames. If I select everything, you're going to see that now everything starts on frame 1, but the hands start on frame 2. If I were to play this animation, the first 2 frames, the hands are going to be completely static. It looks horrible. However, I already knew that my animation was going to be 120 frames. So if I select any range in between this element that's exactly 120 frames, we are going to have a cycle. So let's say we start on frame 20 and we end on frame 140. Even though the keyframes are not landing exactly at the beginning and at the end, that doesn't matter because since the curves are clean, as you can see here, everything is going to be a cycle. It ends and it starts on the exact same frame. See that? We don't get any weird thing. We don't get any weird movement. So everything is working very, very nicely. So now it's time to start offsetting things. I'm going to go back and let's do this a little bit more orderly. So the first thing I want to offset are the hands and the feet. So I'm going to grab this hand, and this feet. We're going to grab everything. Probably going to grab the torso as well. It does have a little bit of a rotation there. So I'm going to grab torso, hands, and feet. And all of this, guys, let's move them 2 frames. 1 and 2. So now, the hips are going to move first. And then the torso and everything else is going to move later. See that little bit of a squash and a stretch that we get on the torso? It's looking really good, right? Now, if we go into the hands themselves, we have fingers, and we can also offset the fingers. So let's say we grab this 2 guys and this 2 guys. Oh, careful! I think I grabbed something extra there. There we go. So not the base of the fingers, but the middle part and the tip, and all of this. Well, they don't have an animation. Oh, did we not animate the pose? I think we did animate the pose. Okay, so that's fine. Let me show you how to fix it. So I want to add a little bit of delay there as well. But if you remember, our initial pose here, like our intermediate pose, didn't have any sort of animation. So we need to animate. What am I going to do? Let's deselect geometry here so that we don't select anything. I'm going to select the fingers now, even though we've already done this or done the whole like flipping and things. And I'm going to make a little bit of a fist here. And same thing on this side. There we go. Now, I know that my fingers, not the hands, but the fingers, should still be clean because we haven't done any offset. So we can just select the curves of the fingers. And right now we're in frame 28. That's fine. Just hit S on both of them. And then on frame 87, we want to copy this pose. So we're just going to middle mouse drag, hit S, and then over here, hit S. So now we have this. You can see the hands open and close very, very nicely as I go up and down. Now we can do the offset that I was talking about. We can grab the first or the second middle finger, middle part of the finger, and final part of the finger. Middle part, final part, middle part, final part. Middle, final, middle, final, the middle, final. Go into the graph editor, grab all of these very nice curves here. Let's do 1, 2 frames of offset, and then I'm just gonna grab the tips of the finger, the last curve there, and there, and I'm gonna do 2 more frames. So now, if I take a look at the whole thing, you're gonna see that we're gonna start getting a lot of stuff in here when we select everything, but we're also gonna start getting this very, very nice offset all around the character. So look at the hands. Very nice, right? So the hands are looking way, way more natural, and we're getting this very, very nice effect on the whole character. This very natural, very flowy feel to the whole thing. And that's because we're offsetting things. Again, this is very important. Offsetting things in animation is one of the most important things to make animations look a little bit nicer, because something that people tend to do a lot when they start animating is they just keyframe everything and they just hope that the poses alone and the in-betweens alone are gonna do the whole thing. And as you can see here, having this sort of effect, this sort of change, really makes it into a very, very nice effect, right? Look at the fingers there. Let's turn off the curves. Look at that very nice watery motion. Now, one thing I definitely need to do is, I need to select my frames, in this case, from frame 20 to frame 120. And if I check, this again is the cycle. Sorry, it's not 20 to 20. It's 20 to 140, because our original time was 120 frames. And look at this. Very cool, right? Very nice, very composed, very balanced. And we got a nice idle cycle that could work like anytime. Like, just imagine you're playing a game and there's this crazy NPC on top of this pose, and he's just on this idle pose until you get there and you interact. And once you interact, then another animation will play out. He'll jump or he'll do something, and we'll get a different result. Well, that's exactly what we normally do in games. We create animations. NPCs tend to be in their idle animations most of the time until they interact with something, and that's when they jump into like the attack, the walk, or whatever. Now, the camera, if you remember, we've animated this so that it started on frame 20. We just need to move this, again, shift and middle mouse click, so that the camera movement starts on frame 20. And if we go panels, look through selected, we're gonna get this. Very nice, like cinematic shot of the character, like doing its practice. You can imagine like the cool music on the background, like doing the montage and stuff. Well, that's exactly what we do. If we're doing like just one scene of our animation, we're gonna get something like this, and it's gonna work perfectly fine. Of course, if you've taken our Maya 2021 course, you already know how to get UVs out and how to do textures, and you can very easily texture this guys like this logs down here to create a nicer scene. In this case, I'm just gonna render this in a more like traditional approach. Now, before I do that though, I do want to show you one more trick that we can do, which is we can also animate a couple of things about the camera. Okay, so let me do a quick render setup here. I'm gonna go. I don't think I wanna. Do I want an infinite background? I think I'm gonna do an infinite background as well. Of course, a little bit bigger so that we see the whole action here. There we go. Panels, look through selected. I'm just gonna grab this geometry again here. Let's just move it around. Rotate it. Rotate it like this so that the whole background is covering us. There we go. Again, panels, look through selected. Grab the whole thing. Just move it closer. Panels, look through selected. There we go. Because we're never gonna see the bottom thing, right? So it's just like this, like the tips of the cylinders. We might want to do this. I mean, I could even just like rotate it like this so that we. The thing I don't want to see is I don't want to see the background of the scene. There we go. So that's way better. We could also rotate the whole thing. We could do a sphere. It's all ways to cheat that. There we go. Now from beginning to end, we never see the other side. Perfect. So again, Arnold lights. I'm gonna create a sky dome light, and we're gonna import the same sky dome light we've been using, the one that's on your source images, which is this peppermint power plant. I am gonna go to the options of the element here, and I'm gonna say exposure -4 or -2. Let's save this real quick. I don't think I've saved yet. Oh. So let me save this before it crashes. Let's call this Karate Kid. There we go. And now we just render. Let's give it just 1 second for this to render. Let's see how this looks. Because I want to show you how we can do a little bit of depth of field. Depth of field is one of those things that really adds to the whole like presentation of things. So there we go. That's a nice like fill light. We definitely need a normal light. So I'm gonna go light, area light. Let's do like a big area light up here, and let's do like 12 in exposure, a little bit less spread. And let's take a look at the. That looks good. Then we can go a little bit higher on the exposure. Just a tad bit. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe a little bit less spread. And maybe the sky dome light, we can keep it like -1. So there's a little bit more light. There we go. That looks very cool. So now, if we go to the first frame, this first frame, maybe we want to create this sort of effect where in the first frames, let's say like the first second, so or the first 10 frames, the camera is really blurry, and then we focus on the character, and as we finish our animation, we get again the blurry effect. So inside of our cameras here, on the options of the camera, let's call this camera shot cam. So in the options of the camera, we have this thing called Arnold. And here inside of the Arnold field, we're gonna have all of the options that we can change on the camera to make this camera look a little bit nicer. So in this case, one of the things that we're gonna use is this thing called enable depth of field. I'm gonna turn this on, and the first thing I need to determine is how far is the guy, in this case our character, from the camera. In this case, he's 8 units away from the camera at first, and at the very end, he's 7 units away. Okay, very important. We need to keep that information available for us. So how do we get this information, by the way? If you go into display, heads up display, there's this option called object details, and that's gonna give you that information. So I'm gonna go into my shot cam, and I'm gonna select this focus distance and say 8. And I'm gonna right click and set a key. So now I've keyframed the focus distance of the camera to 8. And I know that at the end, at frame 140, where the camera finishes, which will be right about here, the option is going to be 7. So I'm going to go again to the camera, and now this is going to be 7, and I'm going to right click and set key. So now the focus, as you can see, is going to go from 8 to 7. You can see the value changing there. At the middle of the animation, we're going to have 4. We're going to be really close to the character. So again, we select the camera here, and we change this to, let's say, 4. Right click and set key. Even though we do have auto keyframe set on, you do need to right click and set the key because auto keyframe does not work for this sort of elements. And now if we check, for instance, in this position, it should be 7.4. Let's see what the camera is telling us. Yeah, say 6.8 is fine. So we're really, really close to the whole thing. Now, if I were to take a render, like let's say here, and just render, we're not gonna see any different result. Let me actually go, oh, not here. I want to go to my system options and change this to GPU. So this is a little bit faster. If you have an NVIDIA GPU, you know, this is going to be a little bit faster. There we go. So right now, no depth of field. You can see that every single object in the scene is at the same depth. There's no blur or anything. But if I were to increase the aperture size, let's say to like a 1, which is really intense, now everything is going to be blurred out. So usually something like a point. See there, like 0.1 is not bad. It's a little bit extreme because the scene is very small. So even like 0.02 might work. Or 0.05, let's try that. There we go, 0.05 is looking good. But here, what I want to do is I actually do want to start with like a very blurred effect. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to right click, stop this. Right click, set key. And then in 10 frames, I'm going to bring this aperture size to like 0.03. Here, hit set key. And now if we take a look at this animation here, everything's going to be in focus. So throughout these elements, the camera is going to be out of focus, out of focus, out of focus. And then in 10 frames, which is half a second, it's going to focus the character. It's going to remain, everything should remain in focus throughout this whole process. And then at the very end, like here, 130, we could just, again, set the keyframe to this value right here. And at the very end, bring this back to like a 1 to fade into a blur. Okay. Now, of course, we could do this blur in After Effects, like in post-production, but you won't be able to get like true depth of field there unless you do some a little bit more complicated stuff. For basic purposes, this is gonna work just fine. And as you can see, the focus here starts to get like bigger and bigger. Oh wait, I think I forgot to set the key here. Very important. Remember, right click, set key. There we go. So now if we go here, it's gonna be half of it, like 0.6, 0.2, 0.3, and we're gonna get our whole animation. So I already know that this is the animation that we're gonna get. This very nice idle pose, but that little blur is gonna help me mask out a little bit of the start of the camera, of the rotation of the camera, and we're gonna get a very, very nice effect. So that's it, guys. This is it for this module. In the next module, we're gonna jump into two big exercises. We're gonna be doing two big animations for our character, which are gonna involve the whole body, and it's gonna be fun. So hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next one. Bye bye.